welcome back to another very special episode of the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my friend, co-host, and reincarnated serial killer,
Alex Dandino.
Woo! All right, guys, we are just balls deep in the October Horror Mega Marathon. I couldn't think of a more artsy, classy way to do it. It's late. I just kind of went for it. We're all the way in to the knees.
There you go.
Knee deep.
Sure, why
In
not?
the Horror Mega Marathon, guys, the descent into the abyss of the horror genre. 31 days, 31 pods. Guys, we're right in the midst of the Exorcist series. Thank you guys for all your support. We know it's a lot of episodes. We love that you guys do this journey with us every year. So I want to start with a thank you for that. Guys, we also want to put out the old Alchemist signal. We're on Patreon. That's right. Patreon.com/FilmAlchemistPod. Guys, it's the best way to help the show. It's the best way to make sure that this show is exactly what you want and deserve. For as little as $1 a month, you guys can get in, join our community, meet our other awesome patrons. And
It's
as
a great
you go
way,
up,
man.
it's a great place.
Great,
as you guys
great
go
place.
up the Highlander tiered ranking systems, you actually get to select the movies that you specifically want to hear. We got another handful in this week, guys. Awesome stuff's going to be coming only for the patrons. So again, guys, that's patreon.com/FilmAlchemistPod. I assure you every dollar helps. We know that you work hard for your dollars. We want to do the same. So come join us over there. Help us grow this thing. And we're working hard to make that a great place for you. So for those of you who help us, thank you. For those of you who are about to, thank you as well. Make sure you go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel, Film Alchemist, to see video versions of most of our podcasts there. Make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you find us. Help us fight back against the algorithmic Pazuzus that are trying to overtake us and suppress us from the masses so they don't see our light and truth. Also, guys, the email is filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. We're on the socials like all of you guys as well. Get a hold of us. We love to hear from you. All right. All right, guys, we're here. We survived the plague of grasshoppers flying on the wings of grass-eating bugs. And here we are, Exorcist III. I fucking adore Exorcist III, first off. I think it really captures the spirit of what was great about The Exorcist 1. I think if this had been The Exorcist 2, it would have been widely appreciated. Far more than it is. I feel like it got a lot of splash over stank from The Heretic. And again, following up The Exorcist, which kind of became the benchmark for many years, and maybe still is really a thankless task to do. And I think this movie does just about as well for a sequel as you could expect. Alex, I know this was your first time seeing it, and I gleaned from our text exchanges that mayhaps you think I need to be locked in a padded hospital cell?
No. I mean, everybody's got the thing they like. Like, I'm not going to bash that, but I do
not. That was a very politique way of smacking me down.
But I would not hold The Exorcist 3 in high regard, to be honest with you. But it has a lot of things to like and a lot of merit to it that actually works really well for what The Exorcist originally accomplished. Where The Heretic, like, I don't know, roughly jettisons, like, I don't know, 80% of the original Exorcist concept. And
yeah, they took some of the skin from The Exorcist and just made like a prog rock album.
Yeah, it's basically like like imagine like a graft versus host and just like the graft slowly being rejected. That's The Heretic. This is like they did a regraft and it's been accepted and it's just, it's still growing. But again, like William Peter Blatty at the wheel, like those kinds of things help a lot. And, like it is a very traditional story. I think that's the thing that's much more complicated for me. That is the thing that threw me a little bit, is for being a movie that follows suit from the original Exorcist. It is very traditional in its storytelling. I guess the original Exorcist is too, but there's just something about it that feels a little, I think it's because of the procedural quality to it. Maybe that's what throws me. But again, it's not that. Again, is not a dig. There's nothing about this that The Exorcist 3 that is just like unspeakably terrible, like The Heretic. Like there's again we talked like yesterday. We talked like The Heretic is good. What's good about The Heretic is like there's like 4 ideas that would have been awesome to be
A lot of
Exorcist
ideas.
movies.
It's a plague of ideas in The Heretic.
Plague of ideas. No movie was made.
Well, I think one of the qualities I appreciate about this film, right, is I think the paring it down really works well, right? Because one of the things about The Exorcist that got lost in the prog rock stage production of The Exorcist that was part 2.
Yes, in the King Crimson version of The Exorcist. That was The Heretic.
Dun, 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 flashy lights, you know what I mean? But what was lost was there should always be existential dread at the very core of The Exorcist, right?
Yes.
The idea of The Exorcist is we feel so dramatically alone. What happens when we're confronted with the fact that we're not alone? And how that actually makes the feeling of loneliness worse when we know that we were never alone, period, right? And I think this movie, because they really try that a lot in the next 2 prequels, right? That we're going to discuss tomorrow.
Boy, do they.
They really get into that kind of concept. And I think this movie might be, obviously the first one is the best, right? A man of faith who's lost his way, right? This one actually, the idea of a detective, a homicide detective, played by the great George C. Scott,
George
right?
C. Scott. Yep.
Yeah, and he is just fucking phenomenal in this role, right? This just world-weary, he just can't fucking take it anymore, right? And just watching him go through this film and just suffer and suffer.
Right.
And have to talk about the absolute horrors that he sees in his daily job and how that would put you in this crisis of faith moment. I thought that was a brilliant way. So not only are you getting this Exorcist movie, right? They really went back to what we needed, which was we need the fucking scares. We need the actual demonic possessions. We need all that kind of stuff, right? The Heretic eschewed a lot of that to its own detriment. So this one gives us all the horror, but anchoring it in this detective procedural, right, that feels familiar to us, I think lets them really slip in a lot of... I mean, this movie is fucking dark.
Yeah, there's a lot of very... it's interesting because I text you usually throughout the movies because this is just how I take notes is I just like bounce things off because like writing them down is just... Writing them down, like physically I write them down sometimes, but like a lot of the times it's just text messages with you. And this was like my big thing is like, I mean, I think George C. Scott's one of the great actors of a generation.
Yeah.
He's wonderful. It's very, because he's playing Detective Kinderman who, like Lee J. Cobb died the year after the movie came out. So like he was never going to be able to play Kinderman again. So to see someone fill those shoes in the way that George C. Scott did is very... I don't know. It was weird because, and I tried to rectify that the entire time because, like, it's not a bad performance. Like, I think that's a really important distinction. Is like, whereas Richard Burton in The Heretic was doing, like his best not to sweat, but still sweating everywhere, and also just
what happened if you just turned your garden hose onto luggage? That was Richard Burton,
and also, like he's also just Richard Burton. Like Richard Burton has one thing he does really well, and that's what he does.
He's a fine actor.
He's
and
a fine actor.
I don't blame him for what happened in the Heretic.
No, I wouldn't blame him for The Heretic. I would blame him just, he does one thing, and that's what you hire him to do.
You know what actually is stunning about his performance in The Heretic is how unbefuddled he seems every scene.
Yeah, he seems unshocked by literally everything.
Like, he really just committed and makes us believe that anything happening in that movie.
Yeah.
Anyways, enough about The Heretic.
Right, sorry. Like, again, like the movie could be called This Guy on a Tuesday, and I would be like, that makes sense. But George C. Scott's performance as Kinderman, I think because, like, Lee J. Cobb, so Kinderman is a much larger role in the book, but in the movie, he's pretty minor. He's an important plot tool, but he's fairly minor in the movie. Lee J. Cobb is just a very different kind of actor. So, like, the tonality and the concept of how Kinderman is presented is really interesting to me in this because George C. Scott is just a very different actor. And, like, he does have these... It's not a crisis of faith. I think that's what's so fascinating to me about The Exorcist III is the movie's not really about this like crisis of faith. It's about crisis of just the crisis of knowledge almost. It's a fascinating thing. But George C. Scott's interpretation of Kinderman is so much more verbose, I think, than I was expecting. And so much like there's a lot of like for me very overstated stuff. But again, you can't fault him because that's George C. Scott. Like he's just that kind of actor. So he brings George C. Scott to Kinderman. You're going to get a different kind of version. You're not doing someone doing a Lee J. Cobb impression. And I think that was kind of throwing me. But again, once you settle into it, it is a fascinating performance.
Yeah, and I would imagine 98% of people who watch this movie won't know that that's the same character.
No, I don't think so either.
He has kind of carte blanche to go in and, make it his own. But what I just found, right, is that I think what you said is a great point, right, is that this isn't a crisis of faith movie like the first one. This is I don't care if God is real or not, right? Because if God's not real, then, okay, I'm still down here, sweeping up corpses. And if God is real, fuck him, right? Like that's
right, totally.
That's the tone of this film, right, is that there is almost a nihilism at the core of this film. And again, in the movies we'll talk about tomorrow, I think there is too much to the detriment of it. It really works in this one, right? And you get these great moments. So not only is he nihilistic, but he brings this absolute amazing human depth to Kinderman, right? There are so many moments with him and the priest that are just absolutely heartwarming. Just watching this odd couple kind of, go on their journey of friendship and watching the fact that he holds that so dear, right? And he has a family that he holds dear, right? And he puts up with his mother-in-law putting a fish in his bathtub. Right?
The Carp thing's one of those.
Yeah, it's strange, and that's also the point in the film when you go, are we going to do that close of close-ups the whole movie? Like, are you just going to make me, like, stare down his hairy ear hole this entire... Okay, yeah, we're going to do extreme close-ups on every old in the whole movie. That is something that is a knock against this movie. But it works to great effect, right? And those elements, right? Because in the first one, Lee J. Cobb is essentially just playing, like, this cocksure, like, I'm going to get answers, right?
Yeah.
In this one, he's a man who's just like, I don't care about answers anymore. I'll do the job, but like I know the answer. People suck, right? And so there is this weird thing too about pairing this serial killer with Karras's death.
Yeah,
we'll get to in a minute. But the scene of the movie to me, right? And I was like, this is why Exorcist III understands what's great about The Exorcist, and it's that POV shot, that long fucking POV of him entering the hospital when the father's murdered, right, and drained of his blood, and it's. Again, it has this amazing Seven kind of imagery throughout the film.
I was just going to say, he reminds me actually a lot of the way Morgan Freeman plays Somerset.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing, right? It's a man who's seen too much confronting, the realities of God.
Yeah,
But in that moment, right, that long POV of people watching this man, it tells you how they all know how much this guy meant to him, right? And how deep this friendship was. And watching that, and then when they flip it, right, and we see from, I guess, where the head of the priest would have been, right, that shot of him just at the edge of the bed, just really a broken man. And we see him several times just get emotional and cry. And I think that's the different element that an actor of George C. Scott's caliber brought. And I was like, this movie understands The Exorcist, right? It's existential dread and nihilism. And I think that, to me, is when you're like, yes, they fucking know exactly what they're going for.
I feel like I would say even from the opening shot, like the opening, like walk through Georgetown, walk through the area is it sets the perfect existential tone because you're back. Like, I think that's a really big part of like what makes like the setting. And again, we'll talk about this tomorrow too, but like the setting for The Exorcist is so important. Like for it to be, and we talked about this when we watched the original one, which is like the setting for it to be just in this like no-name street in Georgetown or wherever, that is what makes The Exorcist terrifying. So like bringing it back.
Not stuck in a traffic jam?
Yeah, believe it or not.
That's it. That's the last one, I swear to God. We're sorry.
They just keep popping up though. Like but like that, bringing it back to this quiet street, it's the tone. Like, again, it's a guy.
You know what else though? It's a great point. Yeah, I don't know if you know exactly what they're going for, but when the demon wind goes through the church, right, and Jesus opens his eyes and all that supernatural shit, I thought there was something interesting in the fact that the demon wind is taking us on a POV of Karis falling down the stairs again.
Oh, I thought it was
it really
interesting.
roots you in this like this PTSD feeling, right, of not being able to escape the darkness, that no one's really moved on in the 15 years. No. I thought that was really cool, even though I don't understand what was happening in that moment. It's a very unmotivated moment.
But to me, well, yeah, I mean, like, there's this, like, there's that, like, revert, like, you, like, flip the reel in reverse, and so, like, the smoke clears and shit, and you're like, I get it, it's supposed to be creepy. But you're right, though, this POV of Karis flipping down the stairs it's meant to remind you, like, remember how violent that first movie ended? Welcome back. Yeah. Like, it's
I was wondering too as we went on if that was a dream sequence, because they do play with that a little bit. If that was, because he has a psychic vision almost forecasting that the father would die, and it's in the church, and it shows the confessional where the other priest dies. Yeah, if that's supposed to be George C. Scott kind of reliving it, then I'm like, he doesn't. I mean, I guess he remembers Karis. But why would that be tied to it? So I was like, maybe that's what so it's not as unmotivated as I thought, because it was kind of annoying, I thought, at the start. But by the end of the movie, I really appreciated that they took the time to root us to that trauma. But yeah, neither here nor there. But again, I think that is what this movie so perfectly understands, right? How many times do we see nurses, police officers, sitting in and just taking in horror these things beyond their control, right? The aging wing, I thought, was actually a really beautifully added element too. Watching the ravages of time and old age on these poor old bastards who become fucking, sock puppets for the devil, and how unfair that is, right? So you watch this constant, everything on the screen is reminding us of how brutal existence is. And how world-weary everyone gets. I think that's the stuff that really makes this sing. And then when this movie takes its big horror movie shots, I don't think it misses. It almost always worked for me.
I don't think so either. That was one of the things I wrote down. It was like, there's never a time where I'm seeing like a big horror piece that doesn't just fucking nail it to the wall. Literally, in one case.
Yeah.
But that actually my favorite is that one jump scare where he cuts the nurse's head off. That's like one of
that is one of the most amazing jump scares. That the anatomy of that whole scene should be taught in a film school, right?
I hate jump scares.
Pacing 101.
I really don't like jump scares. Like, for me, they don't do a lot, and like all it does is just like momentarily, like, again, like all it does is momentarily make me like get hiccups. That was legitimately one of the first ones I've ever seen in a movie where I was like, oh, fuck me. Like, that was scary as shit.
Well, jump scares almost make me angry.
Yeah, I think so too.
When you see, and again, we'll get into this tomorrow, there is an overuse of insanely loud, obnoxious sounds or this and that, like, it's a cat, right? And it just shows me that the filmmakers have no trust in their ability to insert an emotion into my body. Mm-hmm. And that fucking pisses me off. And I know that the argument is, it's supposed to be like a roller coaster ride or a fun house.
Right.
And I was like, that's fine. But to me, when your movie's so based on jump scares, right? When I go back, it's like going back through the haunted house when the lights are all on. And I'm like, I know that the cat's coming and I know it's a fake scare and it doesn't fucking work and the movie feels hollowed out.
Yep.
And that one is so brilliant because it starts in the fucking big balls of this shot, right? Just putting it on sticks, like, 40 feet away.
I love it. You're just letting it run. Like, you're just, like, it literally is like Blatty walked away. He's like, I'm going to get a coffee.
Yeah.
Like, that was it.
Sorry, I've got my snow delivery. No, I'm just kidding. It was the 80s. No, it's actually the 90s.
It was the 90s,
I don't know.
1990.
I am not saying that
probably shot in 89.
I just assumed everyone in the 80s was on drugs. I don't have any info. Don't be mad at me. But
tomorrow we'll talk about the person who's definitely on drugs during the 80s.
We got to stop doing the Ghost of Christmas Past and Present.
I know, sorry. It's the hardest thing about this. It's actually the strangest thing. I was talking with my wife about this today, like, after watching all the ones we watched that I watched, it was like it's so strange because like it is so hard to talk about. Like you can talk about them compartmentalized, but it's so hard not to acknowledge the other ones because like
That's
the first one, not just
being,
notwithstanding being one of the greatest horror movies ever made, but like it's so hard not to like extrapolate pieces from all of them and realize like they do function oddly in this way that the story works, but it's still just like you're like how are we here with it, you know?
Well, this is the one. This is probably the horror franchise most in my mind that is the most reactionary to the critical response. And so every film feels like an apology letter for the one before it, weirdly enough. Right? Yeah. Like from, 3 on.
That's exactly how I put it.
But it...
Well, it's interesting because like The Heretic's not really an apology letter for the first one. It's more just like, how cool was that? Watch this. And it's like...
Well, no, that's the one where they're like, they already had done film school and they're like, oh, now we're film PhDs. And it's like, no one wants to watch dissertations, dummy. Like, get back to the scares. So getting back to the jump scare scene, right?
Yeah.
What I had forgotten about that scene is that it has the false cut, right? Where we cut into the room the first time.
Yeah.
And the patient wakes up. And I guess you would say that's kind of a jump scare, too.
Yeah.
Where he's like, why are you not waking me up, right? But it's like, it's natural sound. It's not like a violin, right? So this guy wakes up, closes the door. They go back to that fucking tripod for what feels like 5 minutes, what's probably only like a minute and a half. And I was like, the fucking balls on this dude. And then you see a cop come, you're like, okay, she's safe. Oh, right as she goes for the door, the cop leaves. And it's just this unmotivated, we don't know who the killer is. We've kind of seen the giant corpse scissors, but we have nothing. This is the first, like, all the way in your face, not a police recounting of the horror, because there's a lot of that, like, we found a body.
Yeah.
And then a 30-second description of the absolute worst things you can do to a body. When you see that moment, and then it has that zoom, too, so it's such an obnoxious move to add to this insanely still shot. Oh, man, just what a
incredible.
Great scene.
It's an incredible shot
of a scene. Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's interesting. Yeah, there is like these really great like pieces of filmmaking technique, but then there's also like because again, it is like this straight up detective story. And what I love about they give you they give you like one of my all time favorite beats in detective movies is the stare down. Like you always have like the stare down between our guy and a would be aggressor or something like that. And the first time we get it is with Patient X with Kenderman. Like this is really like to me like this is the reason George C. Scott is in this movie. Like no other actor could have done this with Jason Miller, but like then when the switch happens, you're just like, fuck, dude.
What is crazy about that too is how he's in the room, but he's not the heavy hitter in that scene.
Not at all. He's so
taking
crazy.
it in, which, acting is reacting, as they say.
Yeah.
And that's the second case in my argument, too, is why this should be an absolute beloved and cherished sequel. Everything that happens in that padded room is perfection.
It's magic. Absolutely.
It's Brad Dourif coming out, and it was so funny because I was like, wow, this is almost like a reverse Child's Play. Like, you could sneak this in as a bridge in Child's Play. And then at the end, he even says, it's Child's Play. And I was like, oh, fuck. So it's a perfect pairing with our Child's Play series we did, right?
True.
Except in this one, it's Charles Lee Ray getting pink-socked into a dead priest who's got to become like a brain cell farmer.
Poor Charles Lee Ray.
I picture the Gemini killer just kind of Jimmy Cartering around in this head. Like, well, it's my peanut farm now. I gotta grow things and he's like re-nailing together like neuron synapses and shit.
That was actually that explanation. The second time they have their little confrontation, the second confrontation they have together is like that might be one of my favorite explanations. Like, so being a demon inside someone is sort of like being a brain surgeon. Wow.
Yeah.
That is complicated and terrible and sounds like a huge waste of time if you're a demon. Like,
well, also you're like, this feels like so much extra work. Like, I think the devil.
That's what I thought. Yeah. I was like, Jesus Christ, possessing people sucks.
Yeah, I'm assuming that just like the cast of Mad Men all ended up in hell, and this is one of their plans, right? Like, you need a way better marketing thing than a priest did it. A homeless priest. He done went crazy after he fell down the stairs and he moited. And now no one's going to church. And then he smacks the secretary's ass, and Satan's like, these guys are for real. but it's such a laborious, long game that he's playing. But honestly,
it's a 15-year odyssey, man.
It's fine, because getting Jason Miller back and seeing him in that role was fucking excellent. Yeah, and honestly, I remember the shock of the first time when they switched to Brad Dourif, and I was like, wait, what the fuck is that? And that's the the inner spirit. But again, I think this scene captures one of the scariest fucking... This movie, again, keep getting back to it, right? Is not only is it just so understanding what makes The Exorcist great, but it because they do it, they're able to force so much darkness down your gullet. And one of the things that is really hard to accept in this film is that Father Karras is burning in hell.
Yeah.
So Father Karras at the end of the first film, right, regains his faith, or he tries to, says, take me, demon, and jumps out the window to save this little girl, right? And he squeezes his friend's hand. It's a lovely, poetic moment. Half a second after that, he's burning in hell. And so what we're sitting there forced to ask is, because he says, Marin is in here, and everyone I murder, he has to watch, right? Mm-hmm. He watches as I pump this priest's blood out, right? Like, work him like a fucking, old-timey butter churn to get his blood out in these vials, right? He, like, really goes above and beyond in his, dead body making. And Father Karras has to watch all that. In the and that's one of the things that is so fucking scary in this movie, is one, that Father Karras is burning in hell, right? That's quite an admission for this film.
Yeah.
But not only that, the fact that the Gemini killer is constantly telling us how Satan's hooking him up. He's like, hey, Satan appreciates my hard work and support, so he's giving me a bone.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's strange in the series where God has given no one a bone ever. Like, what the fuck? I mean, these are startling, big, scary ideas that they just kind of cram into this amazing monologuing of Brad Dourif.
Yeah, Brad. I was trying to figure out, like, why is he crying through most of it, by the way? Like,
that's probably Karras on the inside. That's Karras' body.
Okay, so that was my question. Is, are the tears coming from... Yeah, like, it's got to be coming from Karras or somewhere else, because... That to me is one of these like great little visual moments too. I was like, oh my God, dude. Like, it was like, one, Brad Dourif's like incredible. Like, granted, even if they like squeezed water in his eyes, like, just pretend you have tears. Like, I don't care. Like, it's just an awesome.
I never care where tears come from. Just give me the tears.
Just, if I got tears, and this is a guy who's literally describing murdering people, and there's tears in his eyes, like, Jesus Christ, dude. Because it's a brutal scene when you think about that. It's an absolutely shocking thing. I mean, there's just, it's no...
At the end, we actually see Father Karras on a cross, crucified, being mauled by demons.
Yeah.
The hero of the first film is burning in hell. We are fighting for and asked to believe in the grace of a God who lets that man burn in hell. That's a big fucking... Because again, I always come back to this. Religion is the scariest thing that exists in humankind. Because it becomes a catch-all, right? You can forgive anything if you blindly believe in this fucking thing that we all at a core genetic level know cannot be true, right? That, I just happened to be born in the, Chad Kroeger from Nickelback Jesus country, right? Or, I happen to be over here in Hindu country, right? It's impossible on a base brain level. We all know that this is horse shit, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of us need it to help us get through our day fine, right? My own wife is very religious, so I'm not taking shots at the religious. But it is horseshit, and we all know it. It's when you use that horseshit that you're trying to use to get through your day. We all have it, right? Whether it's tarot, horoscopes, whatever. Whatever gets you through the day, Big Macs, whatever. We all have horseshit. The problem is when you try to take your horseshit to such a level that you do evil things to other people, right?
Yeah.
Religion is fucking scary. Or as they say, right, when he lays out, why are there murders and child cancer? Why did I find a 12-year-old with his fucking head chopped off? And why did the guy tell me that he was given a drug, so he had to watch the man mutilating him, unable to scream, right? How does that exist in a world with your God? And the priest just goes, "Oh, it all works out in the end." And it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And this really brings that home. And so, to me, if done right, there's nothing more scary than examining these concepts of religion.
Right. Well, I mean, and I think that's the futility of, for me, The Exorcist is always about like the futility of belief, like, or the hope that comes with that futility in a way. Like it's the conceit of blind faith. Maybe because I was raised Catholic, that's just always been a thing. I've had that conversation with my parents. Like my mother was raised as a Quaker and she converted to Catholicism, and I was like, why bother? I was just, like, it was a year after I got confirmed as a Catholic, and she was like, I want to do this. I'm like, why? Like all of it is, and
To
I
be closer with you.
And I was like, yeah. And well, that was the thing, is like I was 16 years old, so like I was like at the height of like true shittiness as a teenager. I was like, this is bullshit. Religion sucks.
I
Like,
was
who gives a
Catholic
shit about
before
anything?
it was trendy, Mom.
And literally, she was just like, I want to take communion with you guys. It has nothing else other than that. I have like, she's like, other than that, I like praying. It makes me feel good. And I'm like, all right.
I
Like,
totally get that, though.
I do too. I
And
understand.
honestly,
And like,
even
you're right.
me,
Everyone's
who
got their
hates
thing.
religion, and I think it's horseshit, on my absolute like darkest moments, you do go, dude, hook me up this time, and I swear to God,
Every
I'll
time.
come back.
I have all
We
these
all do
like
it. We all do it. It's
everybody
ingrained
has
in
the
our mind.
presets. I have stuff from my life that I still do, like that has absolutely like. Again, I don't go to church regularly and any of that kind of stuff.
Well, no, like we got brought a box of old books, right? And I'm going through it, and they're like, keep what you want, get rid of what you don't. And there's a children's Bible in it, right? Like a fancy, swanky children's Bible. Because, you got to start indoctrinating early before their brain cells are fully grown. Before their little neural Jimmy Carters are fucking hammering the houses out. But it was all fucking bent and messed up. I still haven't thrown it away.
Wow.
I still haven't thrown it away because I was like, I've been watching a lot of these Exorcist movies.
You don't throw away. I mean, you don't throw
Yeah, I
away.
was like,
Bibles,
maybe I'll just
man.
put it on a shelf somewhere. But like, there is this. Oh fuck.
I mean, it's just it's
Well,
a weird.
Okay, so I want to nail in on this though, because I think it is the scariest moment in the entire franchise. Is Father Karras burning in hell just because he lost his faith? Because he technically killed himself? Or is there a possibility that there is no Father Karras involved in this at all?
I would actually posit a fourth option,
Okay.
and this would be in line with probably what I think a lot of the time The Exorcist is trying to tell us. I think in The Exorcist they're trying to tell us that actually heaven does not exist. That hell is definitely a place. Hell, perdition, places where bad things go, places where bad things wait and feed and hunger for more. I think in a lot of ways the Exorcist series particularly tells us that heaven is this construct that that humans have built. And I actually think the movie reinforces this with that the dream that Kinderman has with Patrick Ewing in it, which again is just like, wow.
Fucking Fabio and Patrick Ewing.
Patrick Ewing. I'm just
Samuel L.
like, what a fucking movie this is. I think a lot of it has to do with positing that hell might exist. Like things that we don't want to find us can find us. Heaven, or what would be considered like, what is like Marin's version of Catholicism, so to speak. Like exorcism and those kinds of things is much more about finding the humanity and finding the ability to overcome that evil in yourself than it has to do with any sort of religious power that anything has over us. I think that to me is actually much more cohesive to understanding The Exorcist than heaven and hell and just the general like basic Catholic constructs of the idea.
It is the greatest empty spot, the hollow core of the Exorcist franchise, is that God is never there.
No,
right?
That's
and
exactly.
I always have believed, right? I believe in a religious kind of concept, right, where heaven and hell are within every man, right? And so I think but it also gets back to this concept, right, where Satan was the greatest, brightest angel, right? Lucifer. You're like, all right, well, God made him that way. because God needed a perfect fucking foil, right? It's like that they've had that lost book of the Bible, right? The Testament of Judas, where in that one, Judas is actually one of the greatest heroes in the Bible. He didn't just betray Jesus for the 30 coins. He betrayed Jesus because Jesus had to be sacrificed, right?
Right.
And it had to be someone of his closest people to bring him in, right? I saw a whole special on it once, right? And I was like, oh, what a cool kind of relensing of. So Judas takes the absolute weight of knowing he'll be this reviled name for all time because his fucking faith and is so powerful. Is a really interesting way to think of that story, right? And so it gets back to this idea, though, that whatever the devil is doing, God made that. That's God doing it, right? He's, as you know, same way they think like God wrote the Bible through these old fuckers' hands.
Right.
Everything Satan does is through God's hand. God is, puppeting him, right? Just right up that little horny ass and moving him all over the place, right? That's how this works, right? And, so the whole concept of this in general, it is one of the hardest things to suffer if you're religious like I was for a long time. You're like, it's impossible to escape that element of it, right?
Yes.
And especially in The Exorcist, one of the things that is really, it jumps out at you when you watch exorcism movies. The hardest part of an exorcism movie is, why do these creatures of such great power not just start neck snapping everyone who's trying to exorcise them, right? And there is a stupidness of men in dresses fucking splashing water on them, and that works. I've always thought the idea is cool that the demons are giving them false hopes and the exorcism actually does nothing. You know what I mean? And so they're just there lingering and drawing this, they think they're feeling the moment of God.
Yeah.
And they're not, right? It's this placebo effect. I've always thought that was a cool, scary idea.
I think that a lot of this, I mean, I don't disagree. I also think that that's a fallacy that occurs simply because of the lack of faith we have a lot of the time in religion in general. Like, again, there's no shortage of terrible things that Catholicism has brought to the world. And I speak just as a person who was raised Catholic, like,
good and bad.
Not great.
Good and bad, yeah.
Yeah, like, we get to drink wine when we're young, but also a lot of terrible shit came from that. So, cards on the table.
Yeah, we got Mystic River and
Mystic River and Doubt.
What is Mystic River? The what's the one where?
No, it's not. Sorry, yeah, it's not
what's
Mystic
the
River.
one with the fucking altar boy? I can't fucking remember now.
I mean, my immediate thought is Doubt. That's always the one I go to.
Yeah, woof, woof. Yeah, some great cinema from the Catholic.
But to me, the construct of like the church, like being God's conduit on earth, is always a really weird thing. Like, to me, people are supposed to be that. And that's always been a thing that I think that's always, and that's in the Bible too. Like,
yeah.
But it's dogmatic law, like God, and that's like the holy water thing, for instance, like men in frocks dousing demons with holy water does seem like bullshit. Like, yeah, it should be. It's like this catering,
the priest
like,
is just get a bucket and a mop. Psst, psst.
Yeah, like that.
Holy wop.
To me, but to me, it ends up being that dogmatic concept of like man's law is God's law in heaven's, man's law.
Here's a great example from the movie, right? The priest that they added, who I have no idea who he was.
Father Morning.
Yeah, why he was in this. It should have been Father Alonzo Morning. That would have been cool as fuck casting wise. They should have had all of the 90 centers in this movie.
Yeah. Why was Hakeem Olajuwon not in the movie? That's my question.
That's what I mean. Shaq should have been in there. The Admiral, right? We had rules for the Admiral just plays the old lady who's crawling on the ceiling. Right? Like, we could have had all of the 90 centers in this.
We'll get to that.
So,
fucking shit, that scared me.
Father Alonzo Morning, who I have no idea why he's in this movie, why he exists, what his connection is to this.
He's just a dude.
How he just walks into the, he's just like this weird add-on. I'm assuming he's from the book and matters in the book. Is tied to this somehow, because it's all kind of tied together pretty neatly. It's weird to have that extra thing in there, right?
It is.
He has this little placard on his wall, right? This little, stitch thing. What we give to the poor is what we take to heaven.
Right.
And you're like, that is fucking rich coming from the people that literally have a golden city that's its own government. Like, what the fuck? I mean, this is what I mean, though. So the laws of the church and man's laws and this and that. Imagine being the Catholic Church and saying all this fucking horse shit, right? Being anti-abortion and contraception, because, we said so. Right. Claiming you're the voice of God and just creating all of this fuckery in the world. And knowing the whole time you're absolutely full of shit. I feel like the higher up you are on the religious totem, the more you know you're full of shit. And that if there's a hell, you're going to hell. Right? Yeah. Like these Joel Osteen guys who are like, I just need another private jet to minister. So I can, I'm like the 21st century Johnny Appleseed. I'm sprinkling fucking America with faiths. I don't know. There's a lot that is frustrating about religion. But to bring it back instead of just ranting, right? What this movie brings down is the very personal experience of religion, right? Mm-hmm. So Father Alonzo Mourning shows up and he's like, I'm going to do battle with the devil. And he probably saves that family's life, right? Well, the grandma who had the foresight to just yank that lady by her ponytail saved her life.
Yeah. Grandma's got power.
Yeah. Father Mourning, Alonzo Mourning walks in and he's just like, what's up? Let's battle. And what does he get for it except for his head hellraisered?
And the oh, dude, that's some of the best. That was one of my favorite.
Scene, though? Yeah, that's an exorcism scene, baby.
That's some fucking exorcism shit right there.
Yeah, because I love the way that he's at one point you're like, are they calling in Thor to fight this fucker? Like, what is happening? And then they'll just cut back to these empty rooms and he's just like, I'm bored of you guys. And I was like, that's it. They got the psychological warfare part of it.
It's a really that part is really that. It's all very, again, that part's really good.
Imagine the scene when the gateway to hell opens and that 12-year-old is on the cross. I was like, what the fuck?
Fuck that.
This movie is horrifying, dude. I'm telling you, this is
the scariest part.
Great
I'm going to tell you right now, the scariest part of the movie was, and this was before we've done any of that shit in The Ring or anything, was that fucking grandma crawling on the ceiling and like fast crab walk. I was like, I'm not going to go to bed tonight. That was the scariest thing I've ever seen in a movie. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's again, that's just another one of those
chills, man.
So God belittles these people and just makes them playthings of the devil, right? These old people who are just, running the end of their life in a not very dignified manner. Oh, now you're going to crab walk and take a cab to go headlop some families?
Jesus Christ.
I'm telling that the indictment of God in the Exorcist series is constant. This is, I would say, the ones tomorrow have the biggest question about God, and we'll do that tomorrow. But God is not in The Exorcist ever. It is unless, well, that's the weird thing though, because The Exorcist has this problem at the core of it, which is people who don't believe because the world's shitty, who at the end of the movie realize, oh shit, this is real. And that's a weird problem that it always has. Because you're like, so if this is real, that means all that shit you said about God really makes him a bad person, like a bad guy, right?
I mean, the Exorcist movies, not tomorrow withstanding, the first three are really, I mean, again, not going to bring up the heretic, but at least 1 and 3 are about.
Let me get my 18-string bass and strobe lights out.
The first one and the third one are about man grappling with evil, not about God grappling with evil. It's about man's pursuit.
Well, they're grappling with, is God the evil?
I mean, I wouldn't even go.
If God is an omnipotent being, he is the source from which all evil flows.
I think they're grappling with, is God's absence the evil?
I mean, yeah, that's a great way to say it, right? Why did he make us and then just walk the fuck out? Apparently he had to go fight xenomorphs in a shitty movie that we'll talk about someday.
God.
That's neither here nor there also. We got to stop talking about other movies we don't love. Also, I realize this, that when you say you don't like movies on here, the patrons want to select them for us to talk about.
Yeah, dude. You just fucking great.
Yeah.
Well, I should gird
myself. It's fine. That's neither here nor there.
Bring it on.
But I love at the end, one of my actual favorite moments, my actual favorite George C. Scott moment was at the end when, he's like, don't worry about Julie. We'll get Julie, right? The demon. And he's like, oh, have I cured you of your lack of faith? And he's just like, I believe in death, disease, injustice, humanity, torture, anger, hate. And he goes on this long list, right? Pain, cruelty, and he's, I believe in slime and stink and every possible corruption. And then at the end, it's just ... right? And I believe in you. And that's one of those moments you're like, who's he saying that to? Who's he saying that to?
Oh, he's saying it to Karis.
I think he's saying that to God. I think that's his moment, like, me and Father Alonzo Mourning here are getting our asses whipped. Thanks for nothing. He's trying to nag God into getting off his lazy ass and helping. You know what I mean? I think that's a shot at God.
It's definitely not the craziest thing I've heard or seen today. So yes, that makes sense.
I think he's just like seriously. I thought for a moment in his mind he had started praying to Thor when the lightning bolts happened.
I like to think he's trying to tell his friend buried inside this thing, like, I believe that you are powerful enough to overcome whatever this is. Which again plays into my theory that this is a lot less about God. It's God himself, and much more about itself.
To your point. There is, again, a huge missed opportunity for God when he's like, I'll exorcise you. It just blows him away. He's like, oh, Father Karras, way to have the fortitude to assert yourself in your own body again. And he's like, yeah, bam. He's like, I'll exorcise your bitch ass. And then I guess maybe it's good that he's now in a Catholic boneyard. Maybe he won't have to be in hell because the cop wasted him. So in part 4, we're definitely going to see George C. Scott just roasting on the spit. I don't know what to make of this ending. It's a pretty fucked up and useless ending.
Yeah. I think for a movie that was what it was, honestly, to me, the ending just happened so abruptly. Like, all right, well, that's it. And like everyone like walks away. I'm like, okay.
Well, once George C. Scott's like, I believe that you're a sack of shit to God, there's not a lot left to do, right?
Not a whole lot left to say.
We're done grappling, and now it's time to fucking lay waste.
Now we're just sitting here in this filth of just religious anarchy.
That's it. That's it. What else do you do at that point?
I mean, the movie makes its point. I think that this is what the movie's almost 2 hours long, and I think this is like the really important thing about The Exorcist III is that the movie makes its point with very like specific finality. Like there's a couple of really weird like 90s movie choices that happen, and it also is lit like a Giallo movie, which is really strange. Like there's just like blue and green and yellow lights, and I'm just like, that's wildly unmotivated. But sure,
beautiful.
Like again.
Well, that's like the weird statue when he walks out of the priest's office when he sees the paper float. Yeah. And you're like, why do they have a Joker priest statue at the end of that hallway?
For all the warts that this movie appears to have for me personally, none of them don't go without notice, but also none of them distract from the overall mission of the movie, which is to tell us that, like, for me, it's about man versus his own evil, and can you overcome, even if it's external evil, can you overcome external evil when as the face of a friend?
Yeah, well, to me, I come back to the moment where Brad Dourif is doing his serial killer shit, right?
Yeah.
And he's talking about the master, right? Which, again, I think is talking about God, not the devil. And then he starts talking, right? And he talks about how he fucking sliced this lady open and filled her with rosaries and the degradation of that, right? And how is this allowed to keep happening again and again? And he goes, life is fun. And the worse you are, the more fucking fun it is. And that's just a paradox of life, man.
Yeah.
And it's this weird, how do you just give so much and shut so much out to try to be pious when everything around you goes to shit? And The Exorcist I is just this perfect capturing of a moment when society and life was changing and getting faster and scarier. And it really distilled that for an audience.
Right.
And I think this one is not completely as succinct in that mission because it's much more nihilistic. You don't get the falsely heroic ending that The Exorcist I gives you. You know, where she hugs a priest and she's like, thank you for saving me. You know, I'm off to go do fucking 2112 in San Fran. This one just says, yeah, there's no point to any of this. and we're just gonna waste this motherfucker.
Again,
from now on, we
I really-
exercise with our pistols.
The similarities between this movie and Seven are pretty shocking, in my opinion.
Yeah,
there's some really serious stuff going on.
And that's
not in
what
a bad
I mean.
way, by the way.
Who better to lose their faith if not a man of the cloth than the person who's supposed to serve and protect us and is constantly wading through the shitty things that people do?
It's true.
And George C. Scott, honestly, the whole cast in this movie is just fucking awesome. But what you really will remember are those moments in the fucking cell, the amazing scissor scare. Honestly, I'm always shocked that this didn't hit bigger and that people didn't like it. I specifically blame The Heretic for that.
Yeah, this is one of those movies I'm expecting on Twitter, or at least a couple of years, where we always talk about, like, is this going to be the one, like, hey, has enough time passed where we can talk about how amazing The Exorcist 3 is?
Oh, that already happened.
Oh,
that
it did?
happened
Great.
years ago, yeah. Again, not for The Heretic. No one's willing to die on that Locust
Well,
Hill.
I know one person.
That's true. Our friend said she liked it. I'm sad. Carmelita, we didn't bring her in.
Carmelita. We're going to have to do a redux. I'm going to have to watch that movie again.
Maybe that'll be something. We'll set up a Zoom throwdown, right? We'll lock the cage on the Thunderdome and have it out. But, all right, guys, honestly, I think this is one of the better sequels to one of the better horror movies ever made.
I don't disagree.
That's it for The Exorcist III. Legion? I guess the book was called Legion. Exorcist III. It's not the end of The Exorcist, though. We're going back in time and across the world to battle confusion and demons at its root in Exorcist the Beginning and Dominion :
a prequel
to The Exorcist. Yeah, sure. Because those movies are what they are, we've decided it would be a fun formatting thing to do one pod where we talk about them simultaneously and compare and contrast the different takes on this. As far as we've had the last chapter of The Exorcist, we did have that short-lived TV show on Fox, which was actually not bad. But that's it. So
2023, guys.
That's right. So that's enough for this installment. We'll see you tomorrow for our Exorcist Beginnings and Dominion. Guys, 31 days, 31 pods, a new show every day. Make sure you have your notification set where you're getting alerted when all the episodes are coming out. It's awesome. We got a lot of great guests coming up, guys, so stay tuned. Make sure you go to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. It's the best way to help us out, and we appreciate it so much. Every dollar counts. Thank you. The YouTube is Film Alchemist. The email is filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Leave us some rating and reviews. More than anything, thank you for your time.